And we now begin the session. I would like to invite Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General, the Energy and Resources Institute, for her opening address. Over to you, Dr. Dhawan.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to extend very hearty welcome to each one of you. We could give you very short notice, so thank you so much for being with us. My special welcome to Dr. Sangeeta Kasture, and many of you are aware of the excellent work being done by Department of Biotechnology in the past, and I'll come to that, what has been done, and perhaps a lesson which we all can learn how to go about in the field of biofuels. They have successfully established a Center of Excellence on Biofuels and Biocommodities. I think the first one was established more than 15 years back, the one with IC, yeah. And then all the centers, they collaborated amongst themselves so that it was a pool of more than 200 scientists working in this particular field. So I'll come to that a little later. My special welcome to our guests from Europe, both Patrick and Prerik. Thank you for being with us. And Saurabh, goes without saying that you are such an important partner. And I'd like to acknowledge that while we say the Energy and Resources Institute, our roots are also in Tata's. We were Tata Energy Research Institute. And that is what I like to say, that when our institute was established in 1974, it was with the mindset, both JRD Tata and Darbari Seth, that energy is going to be one of the most crucial thing which will determine the growth of the country as a whole. And unless and until we take care of the energy, development can be hindered. And that's why in 74, we started thinking about renewables and other sources of energy. Now, when we talk of European Union, and I'll again like to acknowledge that the kind of research and foresightedness they provide in research, it goes without saying. And more important, because see, there are many who can provide you finances, but the kind of partnerships which are always in the European Union projects is that you learn. And of course, today I'll say that it's not one-way traffic. It is something in which perhaps scientists in the developing countries are doing exceedingly well. And it is that the cutting edge research kind what is done in Europe. So once we combine the two and co-develop the technologies, the results are far greater than working in isolation. So European Union as a whole, the kind of bandwidth they have in terms of thinking as well as implementing and the partners they bring together, it's something which is commendable. So thank you so much and your continuous interest in our country. Now coming to why the two sectors. Of course, as I said, energy is something which is extremely important. If we look at what is the cause for climate change, and I'll say somewhere you'll say, and of course, the one sentence becomes, it's the industrialization. What industrialization? Industrialization is the way we have used energy. Not to blame any country for it, because industrialization, the effect or the benefits of industrialization, we all are enjoying today. Have anyone done anything wrong? I'll say no, because whatever the best of the technologies existed, that is what was used in that time. What has happened on the contrary is that the impact of emissions is far greater than we even expected. Till the turn of this century, we were hardly talking about the climate change. And therefore, we were generating energy the way we wanted. Or what was cheapest, what kind of resources we had, and that is how energy was used. It's after this turn of this century that we started talking about the climate change and its impact, and the IPCC reports, whatever they predicted, perhaps what we are facing on the ground is much uglier than that. And therefore, we have to relook at energy. It also goes without saying that development has to take place, and therefore, the usage of energy is going to go up and up. Let's look at aviation sector. And I'm sure all of you are traveling by air for many years. And some of us today, we make the statement, it's no more enjoyable. It's so crowded. You have to catch the flight. You have to stand in so many queues. And there is, even when you come back from somewhere, you won't be surprised that the announcement is made that we'll be landing in 15 minutes, provided or depending on the air traffic. So that essentially means that many more of us are traveling by air than the scenario a decade ago. And it's going to go up. Let's also look at you travel by road. Again, the traffic is high. You look at the ships. Today, we talk about that manufacturing of each and everything is not to be done in every country. It is wherever there are advantages and we'll transport. So that transportation has also become simpler, and therefore traffic over there is also increasing. And that is one of the reasons that we really have to look into these sectors very carefully. What can be the options? Can we shift to a sort of cleaner fuel, biofuels? In both sectors, of course, in maritime, it has become, I should say, they are moving faster than the aviation sector, because the ships, they spend so much of time in waters of a respective continent or country. And therefore, they are coming up with carbon tax, cross-border taxes, and so on. And that necessitates for countries at the global level that they opt for cleaner fuel and cleaner ways. It's both energy efficiency, cleaner fuel, right from shipbuilding to the ports, how much time it takes to unload your things and everything. So those sectors are becoming very serious about using alternative or biofuels. In the end, I'd like to touch upon what is the main problem. We all are talking of biofuels, and some of you may be knowing, or at least I always remember, when I joined TERI in 1985, I wrote an article with Dr. Pachauri on biofuels, and that was published by a magazine called Science Reporter. And we talked about jatropha and many other crops from which we can get biofuels. Now, from 85 to 2023, we are still talking about biofuels. We are talking about its potential. Of course, I won't say nothing has moved. We are using biofuels. We are talking of blending of biofuels and so on. But still, the development has been much slower than what we expected. I'll also like to remind that if we are talking today of climate change, we also say the solution will come from nature. What are fossil fuels? Come to think of it, they are the product of photosynthesis. So many years back, those plants, they got embedded in the rocks, and that's how they got converted either into petrol or coal, and that's what we are using. Photosynthesis is a process, and all of you know about it. It's carbon dioxide get fixed by the plant and they release oxygen, and that's the kind of interdependence. So ultimately, if we are able to produce fuel from the biological resources, that is going to be the most clean method of producing energy. We talk about solar panels. Yes, I'm not against renewable. That's a great technology. But again, if we look at the total carbon footprint, either in terms of putting the panels, preparing panels, or the vast structures on which those panels should rest, and so on, there is carbon footprint, which is far greater than what we are going to experience in case of biofuels. And biofuels is, as I said, and I repeatedly say, why can't we increase the productivity of plants? Our entire emphasis in crop improvement has been largely on converting or diverting energy towards grain production and never towards how do we produce more of straw. And today also in many areas, straw is actually a problem because we call it waste material, which is a wasted material because you can get so many things out of it. So therefore, it is that the biofuels, they have are not potential, I'll say they have the solution to curb climate change or what we are aiming at. The main reason why it is not yet commercialized is the production cost. And I'll also say it's also because we are working in silos. When we talk of parali burning, especially for Delhi, it is, and we calculate that if we do all farm mechanization and so on, the cost is, it's going to cost us so much. Because we are only looking at that the agriculture residue burning versus the cost we can get from that parali, and therefore it only include, and therefore the cost includes the cost of collection, the cost of treatment, and so on. What we are missing, so the health department is not working with them, that because of this burning, what is the impact on human health? We are not calculating what kind of emissions, whether it is like if it is clean and you use it properly, you convert it into CNG or you convert it into ethanol, then what is it you are getting in terms of energy versus you are only looking at that how it compares with the cost of the fossil fuel. That is where we go wrong. And the other thing, again, where I feel, and I must compliment Department of Biotechnology for that, is that we never stopped at biofuel. We said biofuel and biocommodities. And I'll give you the example what we have done in Terry. We started looking at algae and the strains which grow in aquatic marine water. So there is no question asked in terms of availability of water. So you grow alga, and again, there are reports which say 45% on dry weight basis can be lipid and so on, but there you compromise in terms of growth. So if we keep the basic objective as fixing of carbon dioxide, you are compromising on the strain which grows very fast. You may get 20% as lipid. Then what? Because 20% you're getting at lipid and your doubling time is almost a day. Look at the amount of carbon dioxide you're fixing in marine water. But then what do you do with remaining 80%? And there are so many things depending on the strain you can recover from it, that the biofuel becomes one of the co-products. It's not the only product. And that's how the entire process can become economically viable. So what basically we need to look into is in totality, what is the benefit of the technologies we are going to adopt. Let's not create any problem of the waste, and therefore every part of whatever we are doing must have some use, circular economy. You use it and you earn something from that. So that way, if we look at this is viable, many of the technologies will become viable today also. So in the end, I would like to say that co-development of the technology, putting proper pricing into each component of it and not working in silos. And also, like, it's not just production of biofuel, we also have to see the end user to be ready for it. So whether it is the design of the motor that you are going to run and regulations, and somewhere you also have to work with the policymakers that it becomes a reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dhawan, for your opening remarks. I would now request Mr. Pierre Ashida, Head Science and First Counselor, Delegation of the European Union to India, for his opening address.
Good afternoon, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure being invited by Terry and speaking after Director General Dawan. My ambassador was not able to make it, but Chargé d'Affaires will be there this evening. So he will deliver the kind words in the global context of the cooperation between EU and India. But as I said, it's a pleasure to speak after you, Director General. I arrived 1.5 years ago. I am advisor on technology and education to the European Union ambassador to India. And I remember our first encounter, I asked you, are you interested in biofuels? And you said, yes, I am. I said, yes, me too. So we started this little dialogue, and actually it's a new domain for me, but I started collecting interest from the European side, collecting interest from the India side, and I see most of the colleagues here in the room, I know them. And so it's a really a pleasure to bring people from different sectors together, because we have to combine those forces, and it's not always easy, especially for us working for an administration. I will have 3 messages today. The first one, I will precisely go through the agenda to tell you how we were designing today. The issue is not necessarily only technology, and what I realized extremely rapidly coming to India was an issue of training. Training, capacity building, price, Director General, as you flagged. So that's why today we have brought experts from Europe, from Margarita, Elena, from this aspect of training, capacity building. So bringing technologies at the same time, making sure that training is there. We have brought colleagues like Chaba and others, and also I see colleagues from India, because we have to look at the financing aspect. Without financing, no scale up. Without financing, no scale up. And I tell you, because it's not only we governments who can or must put money on this energy and climate transition. We need hand in hand to work with business. So this was the second group. And of course, after I didn't forget about the scientists themselves. So the scientists under the different aspects, being on a pure technology, chemical, chemistry, artificial intelligence, and so on. We must have a variety of technologies that we have not yet anticipated. So that's why we have today several very good friends speaking. I will have my colleague Nina Fenton. Dr. Fenton, she is the head of EIB, European Investment Bank, for all Asia. She will speak. I really appreciate today on the opening panel to have Dr. Mukherjee from Tata, Dr. Katsure from DBT, because with DBT, the EU has a very good, very strong relation. And it's true, and you have said so, Dr. Dawan, that the way EU cooperates is open. We exchange ideas. We do not have the solution alone. So it's a way how we finance, and it's a way why when we make joint projects, we need an equal partnership. It's not only European with 1 or 2 Indian. It's definitely a balanced partnership and going both ways with ideas that are submitted by Indian to European, where we have not seen, for example, the issue of affordability of technologies. It's an issue that is often neglected in Europe. So this was my first message on the agenda. The difficulty will be, and this will be the work of Dr. Krehan in the coming days and weeks, to bring all those ideas together for recommendations. Because my message number 2 is what we will do. Today, the objective, and there are also listeners online, we have broadcasted via YouTube, we are recording, is to take that message and to continue. The idea, or at least some of the ideas, are to continue after this workshop to maybe look at specific technologies, but also look at this integration between science and education. And one of the very concrete aspects, which I discussed already yesterday, Sunday, with some colleagues here, was to organize a roadshow of European stakeholders, bring European companies, bring European universities on a 1 or 2 weeks roadshow in India on biofuel economy. And then, as a first step, reverse it later by a roadshow of Indians to Europe. We need that roadshow because you might know, actually, I was surprised, but often I am encountering Indians who know better Europe than Europeans know India. So we have an imbalance here. You have to be more attractive, you have to be more known to European. The Europeans are doing the same mistakes as the Indians. They all go to the US. So I really want to build that bridge, and a roadshow is a concrete thing. The second thing, and this is an issue that we are starting to discuss with Director Katsuri and other part of the ministries, other ministries with MNPG, with MNRE, is to bring money on the table, seed money. So Dr. Katsuri is going to explain what is being done under Mission Innovation, where the EU is putting 20 million euro on a biofuel project, and we will continue. So today, tomorrow, there will be ideas that will help us to design precisely this kind of call for proposals. So those are very concrete things that I definitely want to foster. The third and last thing is maybe something a little bit more personal about me and what I want to bring. First of all, I called my daughter to help me to prepare for today's speech. She's in fact in Japan because she's half Japanese. Her mother is Japanese. I'm French. So she's in Tokyo, and I said yesterday, can you please use ChatGPT? And can you prepare my speech? I gave her a few keywords, and she did it. She sent me the result, which was quite good, in fact. But yet, then she said, Papa, the problem is ChatGPT doesn't ask questions. It only gives answers. And I say, you are right. I need questions. I need to know what I should do. So there is a limit to right now still to artificial intelligence that cannot create questions. And the way that Socrates, Platon, and philosophers in India is to ask questions, not necessarily to have a solution. And we are all scientists. So if you have a solution, it's not enough. Actually, it's only half of the story. You need the question. So this is the first thing. And the second thing I wanted to tell you is my grandfather, I had two grandfathers, and one was from father's side was a farmer. On mother's side was a forester. So I always live in a society where I saw biomass, I saw things that can be used. So I'm definitely sure that we can move along that way to make our economy more sustainable. We have no choice. I see colleagues here in the Club of Rome. I have been many years when I was very young at the Club of Rome. I was board member of the Club of Rome, one of the youngest on a European chapter, the board of the Club of Rome, because without sustainable development, without societal solidarity, we will not live. We have to move forward along that way. And I'm very happy in the cooperation with India. I am head of the cooperation on education and research. I told you, I am myself a member, a delegate right now at G20. And just to conclude, I have something interesting to tell you. It's almost a secret, but it's very interesting. This morning, the EU was, because in 2 days I am in Varanasi, we have a G20 preparation of the summit. So with the head of state on the 9 and 10 of October. And it took us several months, but there is a digital art corridor at the summit. So Prime Minister Modi, all the head of states will run in a hall for the summit on 9 and 10 of September with cultural artifacts from G20 countries. I'm very proud to tell you that the EU has decided to bring the bust, the sculpture of Marie Sklodowska-Curie as an artifact. And we are very proud of it for two reasons. First, she is a scientist. So the head of states will run in a digital digital and physical corridor where the EU will be represented by a scientist. She is a very famous Polish, French nuclear scientist, and she is a female. We need to promote equality in society, so it's part of our democratic value. So it's just to give you that science is everywhere, and we are very happy to contribute that way with a female scientist to the G20. So you will see it in a few weeks in the newspaper, but I already tell you what it is for the EU. So thank you very much for participating. Let's focus today and tomorrow. We have very good experts, and thanks to all of you.
Thank you for your remarks, Mr. Pierrick. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Patrick Crehan, CEO, CKA Brussels, for his opening address.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming at short notice. The work on the roadmap started last year in November. And what's quite interesting is that we were initially very much focused on the grand challenge of decarbonizing aviation and maritime transport. A very important problem. I think we're going to make rapid progress on that in the future. And the initial idea is that when we deal with biofuels, we need to do a lot of work on new fuel technologies, refinery technologies, etc. And this is true. We have to do a lot of research on developing the best fuels and fuel technologies we can to solve that problem of decarbonizing aviation and maritime transport. But what was unexpected is that when I started to talk to the industrialists, they were saying, good, we welcome those projects, the pilot and demonstration projects, we need those, so keep them coming. But there are other things that are being neglected that we need to look at as well. And the first thing that they told me about is that the entire geography of fuel production is changing on a massive scale, which is true. Instead of drilling oil out of the ground, transforming it, and then distributing it widely, we have to find the feedstock widely and then transform it and then bring it to where it is needed. And that's a total geographical inversion of the process of developing fuels. And I think even those who are working on the problem appreciate the scale of this change. And so one of the concepts that I came across in India is the people talk about social transformation. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. This is a social transformation on an unprecedented scale. And it's not just a question of substituting fossil fuels with renewable substitutes. It's a question of totally reinventing the energy system and ending up with something that has the power to transform society at every level. Improve the livelihoods of farmers, improve the quality of life in cities, etc. And so I really love to hear people talking about social transformation. So I asked the industrialists, what are the barriers to implementing this transformation? And they told me, first of all, two things. I mean, there are great opportunities for investing in biofuels, but the time is not right. The conditions are not yet ripe for investment. The first reason is that there are problems in aggregating feedstocks and having them available in the quantities needed to respond even to current levels of demand for renewable fuels. And we started to look into this, and one of the things that we found is that very often those who are ready and willing to provide important quantities of feedstocks to the refineries, they're unable to do so because they need small investments, relatively modest investments. And this, I found, this fascinated me because we have had exactly the same problem in Europe in the energy transition. And that's one of the reasons why we've invited Csaba over here. He's an investment banker from Luxembourg, and he's been really a pioneer and an innovator in new financial instruments that bring together large numbers of small projects in a way that they become one big project that can be presented to investment companies. So A typical small project we're talking about, and it's the same whether it's India or Europe, would be of the order of 50,000 euros. But we need hundreds of thousands of those projects. And if you have to go and negotiate them one by one, the transaction costs and the effort is extraordinary. And it's just not possible to do it efficiently. So we need to bundle all of those together into one big package representing one big project of 30 million euros. And that's the kind of thing that the banks are very good at funding and ready and willing and able to do so. So one of the goals that we want to get out of session tomorrow is to explore the possibility of piloting this kind of financial innovation in India and to see, specifically in the area of biofuels, but the concept is applicable elsewhere. So this is a very important thing to realize, that the research and innovation needed to scale up renewable fuel technology goes way beyond the technologies, fuel technologies and refinery technologies. And we have to look at innovation in finance itself. And without that innovation, we will never achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves. We will not, the planet will burn. It's as simple as that. The other issue that's holding up progress for investment in the biofuel sector is the commercial viability of refineries. And this is exactly the issue that the Director General of TERI was telling us about. The fact that you can't just produce fuels on its own. There are all of these other commodities produced along with fuels, and it's in commercializing this bigger project, what we call the circular bioeconomy. And it's in making that happen that we will create viable, economically viable, financially profitable systems for generating biofuels and all of the other things that we need: fertilizers, growth promoters, bioplastics, etc. So these are the two big problems that we're going to try to address in the future on the basis of EU-India collaboration. Now, having said that, there is an issue. It's kind of a political issue. It's a social issue. In Europe and elsewhere, citizens are worried and stressed, and they're getting angry. They're angry because things are not changing quickly enough. They're angry because they're worried about deforestation, loss of biodiversity, and they know that losing biodiversity, it means loss of life on Earth, and it could even mean catastrophic loss of human life. So they want to see the right kind of changes, and they react very harshly when they see damage being done to the environment. So it's very important that as we develop bioeconomy, the circular bioeconomy, we provide people with the reassurances that they need to know that we're not damaging the environment, that we're doing the opposite, that we're protecting biodiversity, etc. That if we harvest biomass for the production of biofuels, this does not compete with food, and it is not doing damage to natural habitats, etc. And so this is an area where we need to collaborate, because believe it or not, consumers in Norway and the Netherlands, etc., they're very sensitive to what is happening on farms in places like India, not just India, Indonesia, Brazil, other parts of the world. And they go to the politicians and they say, stop this, we don't want it because it's not good for the planet. So we need to provide transparency, and this is really an area where we need to work on, because if we don't do it, and if things get blocked unintentionally, we will block progress in biofuels. And well-meaning people who want to save the environment will actually block progress on the decarbonization of these systems. So this reporting issue, we're going to have a session on that tomorrow. And I think it's one area where there's great scope to work together. And it's not just an EU-India thing, it's a truly international problem that we have to solve there. Underpinning all of this is skills. You know, skills for entrepreneurs, skills for people working in ports, skills for people working in refineries, skills for people working in public administration. Because the transformation of the economy at local level requires the help and the complicity of local governments, government at every level. And we've really seen this in Europe. And so now we're making big efforts to train people in public administration so they understand what is the circular bioeconomy, why is it important, And what is my role in supporting this kind of transformation, which is on a truly unprecedented and massive scale? So this is going to be the focus of the roadmap. And later on today, I'll just talk a little bit about the sessions, and we'll drill down into exactly what we're trying to achieve. So thank you for listening, and it's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Dr. Patrick. I would now like to invite our next speaker, Mr. Saurabh Mukherjee, Executive Vice President at Tata Projects.
Good afternoon. Thank you and Terry for inviting me and give an opportunity for me to represent Tata Projects and Tata Group as a whole. Really heartening to see a solid discussion which covers almost every aspects around biofuels. And I'll speak mostly around the aviation turbine sector because that's one of the hard to abate sectors that is crying for attention. I'm not sure we are giving the right amount of attention that's needed compared to certain other pillars of energy transition. But great to have Europe to provide us the support and knowledge and skill set. And I'm sure by the end of tomorrow, we would have a much better understanding about the problems and the solutions for it. See, the Tata Group as such, thanks to Dr. Biba, she mentioned about the initiatives that the Tata Group has taken forever. So we are in the forefront of sustainability in India. And sustainable aviation fuel runs deep into that. As you know, we right now run both Air India and Vistara and Air Asia. And one of the biggest challenges that the group sees is the availability of sustainable aviation fuel. The mandates are coming. I mean, the refuel policies in Europe already mandates a very, very small amount to start with in 2025, but the targets are pretty high, right? Going as high as 70% by 2050. And with e-fuels coming to the mix, it's heartening that we are also talking of that. India is contemplating 1% SAF by 2025. The policies are not out yet, but that itself is like 1.4 crore liters of SAF, right? And where we are right now in that. So it's great time to pause, take a look at where we are and really understand the challenges that we have going forward. Because this is not a problem that you can isolate yourself, right? Air travel means you're flying international. This is a connected world, and airlines is actually connect us. So you fly in Europe and you can't refuel, and those mandates will eventually come to us. We are seeing in US, while US is going to mandates, US is providing the incentives to IRA, right? Yeah, and at this point of time, I think as policymakers should start thinking of whether to put the mandates, where to put the incentives, and put the right framework in. I would not like to put on my technology hat because that's where I usually belong to. But you know, as of today, the commercially proven technologies which are you see in Europe or US are mostly the HEFA side of it, right? Basically reusing carbon. The second you're using the carbon second time, you're taking used cooking oils, large fats, and converting it into sustainable aviation fuel. That may be one of the opportunities for India, but India is looking pretty strongly at ethanol. At least on the first generation part, we have been very successful. We have already reached that 10% mandate. And we're looking to make it towards 20%. I'm sure we'll be talking of the food versus fuels challenge and whether 1G is the right way, but lignocellulosic feedstock can be a great solution for India, and that's not a technology that has evolved. So we heard about partnerships. It's time that we start thinking about how this can bring in, and I have Dr. Ray here. I mean, he's from my CSIR IIP, we have one of the, at least in my previous lab, I had worked with quite a few such technologies, but a single stage SAF production That's really impressive, and I think that's the way to go in. There would be challenges, there would be policy issues. We need the certifications and all, but as a group, we are taking huge steps, right? I mean, in May, we flew the first domestic flight from Delhi to Bombay, 17% SAF. And we had a ferry flight of wide-bodied engine. Dreamliner came over from Charleston to Delhi. So the Tata Group as such is doing its bit, and we expect that the rest of the industry and the whole ecosystem comes up and supports this process. Uh, Before I end, I would like to take a little bit of a dig at how the built ecosystem gets, because I come from the EPC side of it. I think one of the topics that's not really looked very deeply is, as a country, India, are we really ready to build those complexes right now? See, we had been very, very successful in the refining petrochemicals, and we heard from our speakers that we are decentralizing this entire concept of uh, making any of the energy transition clean fuels from sources. Any biosource, to me, cannot be scaled up to where the refineries of this world has gone, right? I mean, during my time in the industry, I saw the economy of scale, and India built the largest refinery in West Coast, and that became a benchmark. Then the rest of the world was catching up. But here we are decentralizing these refineries. We are thinking of many, many sets of these units coming up in different parts of the country. Not all of them are the best places for you to actually build up a refinery as such. So I think we have to see how, as a EPC company, we gear ourselves up for that. For far too long, I think we have been looking at bespoke solutions that served its purpose. But today, the implementation of projects from the customer side are not sequential. So I was working with one of the world's largest refiners and oil producers. And when they planned to get into petrochemicals, their plans were across the globe, and I will have 5 petrochemical complexes, each bespoke, each having its own FID. But when they're talking of green hydrogen, green ammonia, Oxys are talking of the direct air captures, they're all talking of 50, 20, 50 kind of projects. So the design one and build many concept really needs to be inculcated. And a lot of them will not be scaled megaways, right? So as an EPC industry, we are looking very deeply how we can wrap this around into modular solutions. We don't need to get absolutely perfect with the design. See, one of the challenges here is technologies will evolve. A large part, if you're looking at 2G, 3Gs, and the e-fuels, the technologies will evolve over the period of time. Do we have the time? Do we have the resources to wait and design all? No. So we have to build those technology uh, enhancements into our build structure. So that's where the collaboration parts comes. So I don't see a traditional way where you have a R&D research facility developing a technology, and a technology company taking its own time to develop it and scale it up. And then the EPC comes and we build those. We have to break those barriers. It has to be a collaboration, build up an ecosystem where from the time a technology is developed, even from the inception stage, people are starting looking at the constructability and how you can build it quick. And that's where we think we need to get. And all of this needs a platform of digitalization. Unfortunately, the EPC industry is not the most digitally enabled field, and India probably lags further. So I guess the underlying principles have to have a huge digital footprint. You start with the construction in mind. You assume these things are not perfect. They will all get evolved, but still you are actually modularization and trying to take it to the users. So I think with that, I would like to end. And the last point would be, it's no more, the moment you're moving out from fossil fuels, you are not restricting out only to that same bit where, you have one of the ministries which is involved in the exploration, then you carry it and build the products and take it out through logistics. You're actually requiring uh, the agricultural bit of it, the roadway skill to it. We saw a bit of it in the National Hydrogen Mission that we came out. You are making a platform where all the ministries and all the stakeholders are coming in. I think that's something we also need to see whenever we are talking of biofuels. So with that, I would like to end here and look forward to the next level rounds of the discussions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mukherjee. I would now like to invite Dr. Sangeeta Kathure, Head Energy, Environment and Forest Decision Unit of the Department of Biotechnology.
Good afternoon to all of you. So, my colleagues from EU, Patrick, Ferik, Saurabhji, and Kulkarniji, and Dr. Anjan, and all the delegates. Many faces are familiar, some of those are not, but I'll just quickly give overview what I'm coming from the Department of Biotechnology, which is the funding agency operating under Ministry of Science and Technology. So this is a technology, their various priority sectors are like sustainable agriculture, transforming livestock, aquaculture, affordable healthcare, and climate change mitigation is one of the priority of DBT. And we have been supporting energy biosciences, environment biotechnology, and forest biotechnology for a decade. So there are multiple, the processes involved are round of department internal discussion, then a review mechanism, and we have been supporting Center of Excellence or DBT Autonomous Institutes as well as extramural projects. So as Dr. Vibha has mentioned, DBT has set up 5 Center of Excellence in Bioenergy. Those are working under both fundamental as well as translational research, including one at TERI. So no doubt that this bioenergy and biofuels and specifically aviation and marine are very important topics today we are discussing, and we all are gathered here for the same purpose. So policies, renewable policy, you are aware 500 gigawatt by 2030 and bioenergy plays very important role in that. And we have national policy on biofuels, which is very encouraging, and currently 12% ethanol is blended. So Kulkarni will talk about those things, what is the current status in 1G and 2G ethanol. I would like to highlight here that DBT is also working on the biomanufacturing strategy, where one of the vertical is carbon capture and utilization in the form of fuels, materials, and chemicals, etc. Also, as mentioned by Mukherjee, that's green hydrogen mission. This is also again biofuel. We can say that biomass to hydrogen also can produce. Another driver is the ban on single-use plastics. So Ministry of Petroleum has done that is from July 2022. So DBT is also actively working on how to develop the biodegradable plastics in that. The funding mechanisms, I'm not going to in the interest, I'm not talking about this thing, but DBT has been funding all these research related to promote advanced biofuels in the form of both converging, improving the conversion, biomass conversion, as well as developing the feedstock and also carbon capture and all waste to energy, etc. So the thrust areas in focus are feedstock development, that is microalgae, high biomass such as sweet sorghum, and how we can improve the conversion. Currently, these are the challenges. For example, biomass to methanol, ethanol, as we're talking about 2G ethanol challenges, then hydrogen and jet marine fuel. So they're improving yields as well as how we need to reduce the cost. So these are the major challenges. So DBT has been working to support this. And the concept is biorefinery, how we can co-produce the chemicals and materials so that the overall cost gets compensated and we get a good value out of this biomass. So various competitive schemes and international collaboration is also one of the important part which DBT has been supporting multilateral program mission innovation. So and the international cooperation, bilateral cooperation with India, EU is very strengthening so long association, and we also look forward to have further strengthening through this program. Again, I will skip this because this is a general and mostly in the mission mode and various technologies at lab scale to, I mean, from the idea to pre-commercialization, we have a large schemes and supporting this. Again, as I mentioned, carbon capture and improved biomass conversion are thematic key areas, and renewable feedstock development. Again, the systems and synthetic biology. For example, how we can engineer microorganisms or engineer enzymes. I can see here Shirish is working on here from ICGB. So there also we have one of the center. So synthetic and systems biology play a very important role, and we'll look forward how we can. So that's what DBT is looking at, futuristic areas, how these biomolecules can be synthesized within the cells, organisms, so that we have renewable feedstock. And last but not least, techno-economic analysis and life cycle analysis are very important. So these are the four pillars of circular economy: biomass conversion, carbon capture utilization, biological engineering, bioreactor design, and thus we can get the circular economy. These are examples, but because of time strain, I could not collect many, but we have been supporting a lot of demonstration projects. This is just one example that MSW waste to energy projects we have been supporting in collaboration with stakeholders. And the one of this is the large scale facility which Terry has been working, as Dr. Vibhadhavan has mentioned earlier. So this is like algal biorefinery. So how, apart from algal biofuel, can we also produce other bioco products? So this is a 100 kiloliter spanning capacity in Navi Mumbai. Coming to the integrated biorefineries mission, this is the initiative taken and lead initiative by Government of India. The Department of Biotechnology is co-leading this biorefinery mission with Netherlands, and Brazil, Canada, United Kingdom, and European Union are partners in that. The goal is to develop and demonstrate innovative solutions to accelerate the commercialization of integrated biorefineries with a target of replacing 10% of fossil-based fuels, chemicals and material with bio-based fuels, chemical materials. Also, there are these partners like International Organization, IE Arena, and NOVA Institute. NOVA Institute has been working on renewable carbon, so we have been getting all these out from these. So here, there are 8 mission actions have been, innovation roadmap has been developed with consultation with the member countries. And there are 8 actions which are we are trying to address through realization of this goal through implementation under this mission. To identify gaps, challenges, what are the research initiatives on new bio-based chemicals products, how to improve the efficiency that is in pilot and demo projects, review the registration and regulations, and the business plan, again, how to de-risk the investment. As Patrick has mentioned, again, finance plays very important role. Standards and biorefinery process products, and again, last important, which is to ensure sustainability of resources, that is feedstock and processes. So these are all being handled, looked at that. Under the action plan, India has joined hand with the Europe's Horizon for this co-funding, which was announced recently in Goa meeting. There also we had consultation meeting, one CEO Ministers Biofuel Roundtable we had held, and another 2 side events we had consultation on biomass sustainability and mobility. So that was a specific. So we have shared this with EU, and we'll be happy to share. Those things are also available on a website, Mission Innovation website, that is particularly on integrated biorefinery mission web page. So where we also, as we mentioned, the both backward and forward linkages are important. Biomass densification, again, there also R&D plays very important role. What kind of biomass? How can we store these? What are the real challenges in that? Because again, we can't store it for a long place. So all those things we need interventions, that innovations are required in even biomass densification. Recently, IFG and there is some association. I was very impressed to learn that more than 8,000 aggregators are available in country for biomass aggregation. They are working on densification, making pellets or bellies and etc. So which is very important part of supply chain. So for this horizon development of smart concept and integrated energy driven biorefineries for co-production of advanced biofuels and biochemicals and biomaterials. This is the one of the 5 calls under Horizon India EU joint call, where the basically we are looking at how we can develop the zero waste and carbon negative biorefineries with co-production of low cost bio-based products as well chemicals and materials along with the bioenergy. And most of the biogenic waste, how can be treated efficiently? Those could be algae, aquatic biomass, and various conversion process like chemical, biochemical, electrochemical, biological, thermochemical, as well as combination of these technologies could be used. Again, this technology validation is important, and most we are also looking at other member countries to participate, Mission Innovation member countries to participate in that. So we'd be funding a consortia. We are also trying to attract industries because industry engagement is very important when we look at the demonstration and large scale commercialization. So again, assessing economic feasibility and scaling up these technologies is very important. So DBT's focus would be on agriculture waste, residues, as well as algae, aquatic biomass, etc. So this call would be open in next year in May. So meanwhile, Indian and EU researchers, scientists, and even stakeholders, they can discuss together and they can develop the joint proposals. Coming to the SAF, looking at the importance of, because India would be, currently there is no mandate as is mentioned. So again, it is HEFA, the biojet fuel has been also tested and it is commercially also tested by IAP. So now we are also looking at, as you mentioned, the alcohol is also a good potential pathway for production of SAF. So DBT is also announced call couple of months back, 6 months back, and we have received good more than 50 proposals. Out of that, 8 good proposals we have shortlisted, and those we are will be funding. So these are these some futuristic. This is long way to go, but we are looking at some good solutions would be coming out of that. So these are the technology. I'm not going to read those things, but these are the potential platforms. Also, again, advanced modern biotech tools like genomics and synthetic biology also could play very important role. And there are many intermediates. Those also could be synthesized. Those can convert it into SAF fuel. So these are the some of the examples, technologies we are going to support shortly. With this, I thank for listening. Thank you. If any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta. There will be a question and answer session, but after all the speakers have actually finished their presentations. I would now request Mr. Shekhar Kulkarni, Director, Center for High Technology, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, for his presentation.
Yeah, very good afternoon. Probably because of the cold, my voice may not come out so well, but I'll try to give justice to the August Guardian audience. Good afternoon, and it is my proud privilege to be part of this August gathering. It is indeed a time to think and focus more on the biofuels. Now, you must be wondering why I am talking about the 2G ethanol. There are 3 basic modes of transport: the air, the water, and the roadways. Now, unless we have a tightly integrated project, no model can be successful. And by doing this roadways, you can have a segregation of biomass in a limited way, and then the needs can be fulfilled. So that is how I have designed this to be part of this agenda. Basically, I'll be covering more on the biofuel categories, advantages, evolution of biofuels in India, recent initiative, the policy, the PM Jawan Yojana being popular in India, and the key focus area which we can take it as a discussion point for today and tomorrow. Now, this slide looks to give us a glimpse of what are the different ways we can generate fuel out of the waste. It gives like a biogas, bioethanol, basically from food section. Earlier we had a tussle of whether food is important or fuel is important, but the food barrier has been already overcome. We are agriculturally rich country and we have got enough biomass to cater to 2G ethanol as well as other initiatives. So this is just a glimpse of what are the different pathways wherein the green fuel can be generated. Now, the advantage of green pathways is like basically abundant availability of the biomass, which supports the scheme. Then the environment impact is also very important. See, if you look at the agriculture industry, normally when the rainy season crop is to be cut, within next 15 days, the next crop is to be get ready. Now, if you lose on the timelines, the farming gets delayed. So there is always a rush to cut the crop and just dispose of the easiest way. So normally we don't ponder, like we don't accumulate the biomass and then keep it for some value added features. Now government has made biomass processing mandatory for many of the industries, and 2G ethanol is one of the initiative government has taken. And 2G, this biomass is amply being consumed in the cellulose paper industry. So it serves a very good initiative in making a circular economy. When you talk of Excel, we say the circular reference is a damaging thing or it is not desirable. Whereas the circular economy, in real sense, it serves the humanity. So basically, the economic stimulation is also happening because the farmers which are underprivileged, they are also getting some extra income out of it, and improves the energy security. India, once upon a time, was importing crude as well as product. Now, since 2000, we are always an export hub, and now we have realized that we have to go more on the petrochemical side, and still we can be catering to needs of the neighboring country. So this can be an alternate initiative of being energy independent. This is the overview of how the evolution of biofuel started way back in 1975. With different era, there were different challenges. Right, it all began with India began examining blending of ethanol in a petrol in a limited way. ISU made some experiment on four-wheeler and two-wheeler. Subsequently, the government in 2002 government mandated a blending of 5% ethanol in limited states and union territories. National mission on biodiesel was launched based on the Jatraba plantation. However, this did not materialize much. Then government in 2004 government suspended mandatory blending of ethanol in petrol. The issues were basically those time were feedstock supply chain. Then again, there were growing interest in sugar production, and ethanol was coming as a byproduct from molasses, CAV molasses, BAV molasses. So it was supporting for the ethanol blending. 2006 government launched biodiesel policy. 2009 biofuel policy, again 2009 was launched. In the recent initiative, there are basically four major chunks government has initiated. National Biofuel Policy 2018, PM Jeevan Yojana 2019, Satat, this is a sustainable alternative for affordable transportation, and Gobar, which is basically a cow dung, which is otherwise a waste, which can be used not only for manure, but it can be supporting for the biogas. And as we all know, CBG network or say CNG, PNG network is getting into deep pockets of across India. So the localized biomass, biogas can be easily blended and it reaches the needy ones. So basically, again coming to 2018 National Biofuel Policy, basically five-pronged approach, increasing domestic availability production, then adopting biofuels as a renewable option. Then those days the energy efficiency norms were came in because there were growing population as well as growing desire, and income also started going up. So there are a lot of demand, and then we need to really have a control on energy consumption. So the evolution of PAT scheme and other things. Then refinery, we are focusing on the improvement in energy performances, and biofuel will definitely support for the demand substitution, because ethanol blending will help in a long way. We have already developed, we are into ethanol as a automobile economy itself. So independent engines are being developed. Coming to the policy amendment, there has been, as you all are aware, 20% mandate is announced initially for 2030, which has been preponed to 25-26. Already we have reached 10% mandate well ahead of the time in June 22, which earlier was December 22. So we could achieve it 6 months before. Now we are progressing towards 20% target ethanol blending. There are initiatives by automobile whether to go for higher RON engines so that the best out of ethanol potential can be extracted. As all of us know, ethanol is a lean fuel compared to gasoline, but it has got very good carbon intensity, lowest carbon intensity. So we should promote more 2G ethanol. So these are basically the policy initiatives. Coming to the PM Jeevan Yojana, this is nothing but supporting 2G ethanol projects on a pilot way. It all initiated to support 12 commercial projects, which can supplement almost 36 crore liters of 2G ethanol. It came with the government initiative assistance of 1950 crore, 150 crore for the commercial project max. This will basically boost up R&D in 2G ethanol sector. We are parallelly working on enzyme, which is a critical component for sustainability of ethanol, 2G ethanol. So far, we have, this is the journey of 2G implementation. In the first RFS is nothing but the request for financial assistance. So in the first set of proposals, 4 commercial and 1 demo were implemented, and I am happy to inform that IC Panipat plant has started producing since March. Now in the second RFS, there was no participation. Basically, one steel mill approached, but it did not went through. The third RFS, we got 2 commercial projects. Now, initially, first RFS, it was only limited to PSU, which are part of the ministry, and they have been asked to support this proposal. In second RFS, we got participation of private as well, and in the third, many are private. So it is showing that there is a growing interest in 2G ethanol. This is basically the commercial part. As I mentioned, that commercial viability is very low. So government is giving up to 20% of the project cost, and the disbursement of schedule is like this: 25% on the erection of proprietary equipment. Then after mechanical completion, next 25% is released. The third milestone comes after 25% of the annual capacity, production capacity is reached, and the final milestone after 75% of the production capacity is reached. Now, key focus area which we need to deliberate is basically biomass supply chain. Although we say that biomass is amply available, but if we don't segregate it properly, don't bail it out, and then it has to be properly preserved, because we have got typically 2 seasons, and then suppose somebody is designed plan on rice straw, he has to preserve rice straw for the entire year. And if you look at 100 KLPD plant, typically it requires 200 acres of plot to store the biomass. So it is always a challenge, and there are different modalities worked out by PSU and other private players, and now it is becoming a viability. Then there are challenges related to operation and maintenance, because we refiners are more used to liquid handling and to limited way solid handling like sulfur and bitumen sort of thing. But this becomes a very notorious or maybe much to explore. So operation and maintenance also are key enablers. Then as we know that technology also has been demonstrated in a limited way. So as we scale up, there can be different challenges, and as we come across, we can address it. Then enzyme, I just touched upon that enzyme being almost 30% cost to the total production. So we are indigenously working on domestic enzyme production. Then there are ways that to improve the viability, byproducts also are being looked into. This is the just summary of 2G ethanol journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, for your presentation. We now open the session for a question and answer session. This will be a 10 to 15 minute session. So if there are any questions for our speakers, please, the mics will be given to the participants. And for our audience who's joining virtually, please share your questions on the chat box.
Presentation to next session so that I can ask question. So first of all, like no, it was very good presentations by all of you. So and you all came in a very short notice. We are really very grateful to all of you. I know how busy you might be in different activities. So my first question is, because again, since I work in this biofuel area, so how we go about like prioritizing the sectoral applications of biofuels, like ethanol, we have all this program developed largely towards the road transport, gasoline blending and all. And now, when we look at the SAF, as Mr. Mukherjee shared, so there is a huge, if we look at the, even it is 5%, even 1%, so it's a huge amount of even alcohol is needed there. If we reach analyze that alcohol to SAF, at the same time for the marine, if I keep aside that biodiesel and that part, but even there the ethanol and alcohol, other alcohols are being talked about as a easy solution to blend with diesel. So how we prioritize, I think that kind of no, and we have to move very fast as we just learn, because we can't go as usual way again, different steps. So how we prioritize, like if I take even ethanol, so where best, what we look first, SAF or road transport or marine? So do we, no, that I wanted to understand. Yeah. To anyone, so.
For example, ethanol, there is assured offtake market is there. So we need ethanol. So priority would be ethanol for the road transport blending. SAF, India yet to join the COSIA. So till couple of years we can wait. And again, I would say the price, the technology and price would decide the market.
I will leave it to the specialist, but I can see from a regulatory perspective, because the European Union has always pushed market with regulation, which you are doing a little bit less in India. But the colleague from Tata was saying regulation will come very fast. We have CBAM, so we need to discuss regulatory issue as almost at the same time we develop technologies. So I will leave it to Mukherjee, but I can see that probably the pressure will be on aviation. A huge pressure, maybe similarly for maritime, but a huge pressure on aviation. Joshi.
Input on me. Okay, so I look at it from two angles, right? Obviously, we have made enough progress in terms of gasoline. We already, like ma'am mentioned, we are 12% plus, targeting at 20%. But also the economics part of it, to me, is a big part of this puzzle, right? I mean, what's the biggest challenge with SAF today? Bio-based solutions is at least 3 to 4 times more expensive. While you know that in a democratic country like India, gasoline, diesel prices, the ability for the general mass to accept a higher price is difficult. So one of the challenges that I guess some of the refiners in India today are facing with 2G is that the cost of production is actually higher than the market prices, and they get only around 50% of the cost. Now, if you're looking at sustainable aviation fuel, I believe what Europe is seeing is how the corporates are looking at it. Now, if you look at individual airlines, all of them have their scope one defined. And corporates like us, if you are looking at our scope three, one of the lowest hanging fruits is the travel that we do all across the globe, and they're willing to pick up a tab. Now, taking a cue from what Microsoft is doing, right? I believe that's one area where corporates can pitch in, and even individuals, right? Today, if you are booking a flight to Europe, you can contribute to the amount that is being put for the sustainable aviation fuel. So if 2G you are looking at, I think the cost burden can be shared more from the users end. The corporates can take, the flyers can take, and obviously they would need some mandate. As far as maritime, I think there are alternate solutions available, right? I mean, I think green ammonia. I mean, there had been a lot of marpol issues and low sulfur fuel oil, but as we are looking at decarbonizing it, there are alternate opportunities where we are looking at methanol, where we are looking at green ammonia. So those probably are sectors that does not require the ethanol part of it to move to it. That's just a very personal take.
Any other question? If anyone.
So whenever we have a talk about the biofuel, okay, so if you are blending into gasoline, right, we are somewhere losing energy component. Right? If you will talk about the energy density, ethanol or methanol is having half of the energy density of the gasoline. But as far as SAF is concerned, that is fine, okay, because it's a drop-in fuel. You can blend it, use it up to 50%. It is allowed. But my concern is pertaining to maritime transportation fuel, okay, wherein whatsoever the fuel we are using, it is having more towards carbon, so its energy density would be very high. So what sort of alternate, like you said, mentioned is ammonia or something like, whether we are able to use it or at what economic scale, what would be the commercial viability of such things?
To me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the maritime world is pretty complex, right? I mean, Marpol kind of pushed them very hard, and then over 2 years' time, a lot of investments in low sulfur fuel oil are almost looking like not real good investments. So there are companies like Maersk's which have gone ahead and made declarations. They are actually buying on the verge of getting those ships that are coming in. And it's not bio-based. I guess they are pretty clear about e-fuels. So the moment you're actually capturing CO2 and then probably mixing it with green hydrogen, in a sense, assuming that you have a consistent carbon price, I believe that plays out. But overall, beyond economics, I think it's the corporates' goals which are coming in. I think it's a collective responsibility that we are taking in saving the climate. And I think that's some of the way the world would look forward to tomorrow, right? I mean, It is viable. It's definitely more expensive, but you need to have some carbon pricing attached or some level of offsets that people can do. So that's how I see it. But it's a little bit easier because when you're out in the high seas, you can actually probably go a little bit easier in terms of the engines and all. They are a lot more forgiving than the ones that you use within the city streets. So that's my take. So we are seeing that happening across.
I look into that perspective. What's the replacement or alternative to that fuel? So if I'll LSFO or something like that, if I'm using it, so I could see only bio oil could fit into it. If I'll do some sort of treatment, remove the oxygen, and I use it that part, at least we can fulfill into maritime transport.
I'm not exactly an expert around that, but on my take on LSFO and all, those were more around bringing down the level of pollutions, right? I think we have to make that distinction between what is, so Euro 4, Euro 6, wherever you are going in, your carbon footprint is not getting down that low, right? But e-fuels, actually you're capturing the carbon and reusing it. So in that sense, it's got a large carbon footprint impact. Yeah.
Thank you.
A presentation mainly on the different options for marine fuels. So what you said, I can understand that the biofuel very easily can replace that. There is a company, we tried to bring them in this, that is a goods fuel. So they are already making bio oil based, pyrolysis oil based, both SAF and marine fuels. Already that is commercial, marine fuel as I know, but not many players into the into the field. But yes, it's already started happening. There is some certification issues still are there for the sub part. But yes, that is one of the routes. But very good fuel I know personally, but very few are working in that way.
Also, when we are talking about alternate fuels, are we targeting the emissions? Because there is also a school of thought which says that as much important as emissions is also the heat production. So whenever we are talking about an alternate fuel, how are we targeting that? Because hydrocarbons being reduced, let's talk about ammonia or let's talk about LNG. LNG produces 10 times more heat than hydrocarbons. But LNG is the transition fuel for the time being. Talking about the maritime sector, it's a complete supply chain which needs to be built actually, starting from the bunkering facilities itself. Because if it is a green ammonia that needs to be stored on ports, it needs to be stored on ships, it's need to be transported from where it is being manufactured and to various bunkering ports all around the world. Also, the complete propulsion machinery that needs to be built around it, that whole technology which is right now not available. So which requires a lot of amount of funding into the research of these new technologies that have to come about. So what is your take on that? How are we targeting the heat perspective of this? And what is the transition fuel as regards to both aviation and the maritime if you're talking about?
So to me, any fossil-based natural gas, clean gas, or others are really transition fuels, right? I mean, countries like India, which are predominantly coal-based, I look at gas as a replacement from coal, and eventually we will move to a totally renewable space, but till the time we can absolutely build up that infrastructure where we can support our present requirement as well as the 3 to 4, 5% that we need to go. I look at LNG as that transition phase, right? But other than coal, which has an extreme high carbon footprint, gas is not my favorite if I'm really wearing my sustainable hat. But yes, to the point that you started, any transition, I mean, even when we were talking of LNGs, it's not easy even for the maritime sector, right? Because especially for the cargoes, It requires a lot of facilities and the challenge that we saw during the phase when we were in the Marpol. When you do not have that one silver bullet, when people were not even sure whether it is LSFO or LNG or whatever, you don't want capital investments to go in, right? So some of them took that call, and I saw a lot of these projects which were looking at low sulfur fuel oil. They were not moving in because they were not sure whether the ships that would be moving towards LSFO, which is an easier way, or they would go to LNG. So it's a little complex. Not really, I could not get that heat part of it. Maybe you were talking of the calorific intensity of it, which definitely some of these biofuels will be less because like Dr. Piva was saying, when you capture the photosynthetic waste and put it into millions of years, it gets intensified, right? Any of the bio solution would not have that level of it. Okay. Okay, so in the industries, you are talking of the waste heat generation and how that gets in. Okay. I'm not very sure. I really thought about that. Somebody from the audience can wish to speak. I see Dr. Ray smiling.
I think the point that's being made, particularly by Dr. Rathore, and also the response from the gentleman there is well taken, that anytime we use a biofuel, except for perfect drop-in fuels, there will be a lower calorific value. What a lower calorific value does is it causes you to oversize equipment, or it causes you to reduce performance efficiency. But if we look at it in the greater context of the fact that a pure fossil fuel and the value chain for fossil fuels has a much higher carbon footprint, precisely as you said, Mr. Mukherjee, I think at some point the trade-off will show you that it is better to have a lower calorific value and a more sustainable fuel than a higher calorific value and an unsustainable one. So let's leave it at that.
Question.
Ma'am, and also to Kulkarni sir. There are many biomass-based power plant today in India because that was happening, I think, under the Ministry of Power, and all those are being, even the cogeneration plant like for sugarcane bagasse. So how the policy, is there any plan for those to then channelize those, maybe phase-wise towards the biofuel and not biomass-based power plants? Any plan in this direction?
I will answer in a little different way. In this recent RFS, we got a proposal from the steel industry because finally we have to decarbonize the entire gamut of energy. So we can't simply say that only automobile fuels can be replaced. We are looking for a green power. We can't be saying that I'll be charging EV with a diesel generator. So that doesn't serve the purpose. So we are saying that every energy sector has to be transformed into a green initiative. So we are looking for a steel mill off gas that also can support for ethanol production. So that will help in a long way. And there are compulsion and there are guidelines for all industry, including cement and other thing, to process. I think 5% or some percent is given. Biomass has to be processed.
I would like to thank the audience for their participation in the question and answer session. And I would also like to thank the speakers for their presentation as well as their opening remarks. We will now, with this, the inaugural session of the workshop actually comes to an end. We will now break out for a coffee, following which we will reconvene for the next session at 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 12:30 Central European Time.